We get started on today's topic on how to systemize your business and make it process driven. So for those who have attended my previous sessions, they know that my teaching style is more of Q&A type. So I ask a lot of questions, and based on your answers, I customize my session. So whenever I ask you any question, please be active in the chat box so I can help you more. All clear? Just type yes in the chat box to get started and to know that you are actually participating in today's session. Okay, the first reply is from Ashita, so yes. Rest everyone, all the attendees, just type yes in the chat box so I can know that you are actually active. And today's session is going to be more of a workshop style and not a seminar where I'm going to teach you. I request everybody to have some pen and paper. So we'll make an action plan. Like what are the action steps you need to take by the end of the workshop so that you actually make your company process driven. So let's get started with the session. So what are some of your expectations from today's session? Like why on today's Tuesday, I guess, right? Tuesday, and it's like September, and I'm sure most of the CSR and most of the tax consultants are very active, and we have around 50 participants here. Why are you attending this session? What are some of the things that you want to learn from today's session? And what are your, like, what's your top one expectation from today's session? Just type it in the chat box. I think chat is disabled, Ashita. Can you just activate it?
Yeah, just a minute. Pradeep sir, can we activate the chat?
Just try now to activate it.
Till then, your participants can use the Q&A box.
Yeah, if you can just post it in the Q&A, it's also fine. So what are some of your expectations from the today's session? Just click on the Q&A tab and type your answers there. To manage time, okay, what else? So we are trying to activate the chat. So just in the meantime, just type it in the Q&A section. To organize the team, to save your time. To streamline the process, being a managing partner, I want to adopt the process in the organization so my time is saved from routine decision making. To help client achieve their business goals with ease. Perfect. So these are some of the things that we will cover in today's session. So who am I? So my name is Srinivas Vakati. I'm a CA by qualification. And what I do is I help service providers and agency owners who have a team of at least 3 people set up scalable systems and processes. So they spend 80% less time in day-to-day operations and more time getting new clients. Like if you are honest with yourself, how much of your time do you spend on day-to-day operations? Like I asked this question to many service providers, and most of them say like almost my entire day goes in operations and to manage the day-to-day operations. Are you one of those guys as well? So what we do is we help you to set up scalable systems in your company so it becomes a process driven and not people driven. So once you set up systems, your time in day-to-day operation gets reduced, and that time you can spend it on sales or marketing or promotion and to get new clients. This is what we do as a consulting firm. And in this workshop, I'm going to teach you exactly what we help our clients with in implementing. So few pointers with the today's session. It's a workshop, not a seminar. So we'll be actually doing some of the activities. And of course, it's just a 2-hour workshop and not a 6-week assignment, right? So we will not be able to do all the exercises, but we will do some of them and it will go very fast. So what I want you to do is I want you to have a pen and paper or open an Excel sheet or a Word file to make a list of all the actions that you can take. I'll be telling you what actions you need to take as well. So everybody clear so far? Just type yes in the chat box if you are with me. Perfect. So let me start the session with a story. So few years back, I met a business owner who the turnover of the company was around 300 crores. I mean, very successful business owner. What made him successful as a business owner was he would spend most of his time on sales or marketing, how to get new customers. He would focus on that. And once he would get that, his primary focus would be to how do I increase the gross profit margin and to save the CST taxation. That used to be his primary focus. And he was successful at it. But the challenge was he ignored everything else. He had no idea what his team was doing or what they were doing, or like what was going in the operations, what was going in the accounting, nothing. He had no idea. And after like 3 years after I met him, his company went bankrupt. Do you know why? One of the company senior management person, he was just taking out the funds from the company without the knowledge of the business owner. And the business owner had no idea that something like this was happening. A company with a turnover of 300 CR just collapsed. And the reason was simple. There's only one simple reason. The company didn't have proper systems in place. Business owner did not have a system in place to track those important numbers. If we had a system in place just to see, okay, what was going on, like how much expenses are we incurring on a monthly basis, if we had seen just that, the company would be still in existence today. After meeting him is what made me go deep into learning what are the systems and how to implement those systems. And once I learned those systems, I quickly realized that these systems can be implemented in any company. It doesn't matter what the size of the organization is or what type of business are you in. You can implement these systems even if you are a sole proprietor or if you are a CEO of a company with a team of over 300 people. It can be set up and it's very easy to do it as well. It's not a rocket science. So like I have said, what I will be teaching you in this workshop is what we implement with our consulting clients. With our consulting clients, we take an assignment of anywhere between 6 weeks to 12 weeks. And whatever we implement with our consulting clients is what I'm going to teach you in today's session. So what's the agenda for today's session? We are going to address what are the top challenges you face as a business owner. What do I mean when I say the word systems? And what are the 5 steps that you need to implement if you want to systemize your business? And I'll also tell you, once you implement these 5 steps, it will help you to become a dashboard CEO. What do I mean by a dashboard CEO? You can actually manage your entire business just by looking at one piece of paper, which is called as dashboard. That's what I'm going to share in today's workshop. Over the last 7-8 years, I have studied over 100 business. I have actually interviewed over 50 business owners to ask them like what are some of the challenges that they are facing. And I have also asked and interviewed some of the most successful business owners to get their advice on how do I build your dream company. Based on everything I have learned, now I'm 100% sure that if you want to build your dream company, you must have these 4 elements. Again, I repeat, if you want to build your dream company, you must, I repeat the word, you must have these 4 elements. The first element is right strategy. What do I mean by that? You must have a very clear long-term and short-term vision for your company. You must have a long-term vision and also a short-term goal as well. You must actually know where you want to take your business to, what direction you want to take your business to. And the second element is you must have right systems in place. You have strategy, but if you do not have systems to back it up, your business will fail. You must have right systems, you must have processes, and you must have controls in your company. Once you have that, the third element is you must have a system in place to get new clients or new customers. You must have a way to generate new leads and to get new customers. If you do not get new clients, the growth in the company gets stagnated. And the fourth element is you must have a strong team in your company. The team you have must be aligned so that they execute the vision that you have set up in the company and to follow the systems and to follow the systems that you have placed. So these are the 4 elements you must have in your business if you want to build your dream company. Now, ask yourself this question. On a scale of 1 to 10, how strong is each element in your business? Like how strong is the strategy in your company on a scale of 1 to 10? On a piece of paper, make a note of it. You have 30 seconds. And also, if you want, you can share it in the Q&A section as well. Like how strong is the strategy in your company? How strong are the systems in your company? How strong is sales processes in the company? You can also share it in the Q&A section as well. Like what's your strongest element in the company and what's the weakest element in your company? Once you are done, just type yes in the chat box. Perfect. So now let's move to this next session. So one question that I always ask the business owners that I meet is what challenges are you facing in your company? And almost 80 to 85% of them say these are the top 5 challenges. The first challenge is firefighting, and they spend a lot of time on handling emergencies. And the second challenge is employees are not clear about the work they need to do and they do not take responsibility. And you also have to give the same instructions to those employees about the work they need to do. And you have to constantly follow up with them to get the work done. And the fourth one is business owners are overwhelmed with the work that needs to be done. And now, like after many years into business, they have actually forgotten why they have started the company in the first place. Like most of the business owners, they started with the intention, if I start my business, I'll have more freedom. And I am my own boss. I will be able to work less. After a few years into business, they have realized, okay, now I'm working harder than ever. And it's like I have to deal with all the problems of all my employees. And it is leading to spending actually less time with themselves and their family. These are some of the top 5 challenges that most business owners face. Are you one of them as well? If yes, just type yes in the chat box. Or if you have any other challenge other than this top 5, please do share them in the chat box as well. Perfect. So I can see most of you are actually having the same challenges that I have listed here. And what you must do if you want to overcome these challenges is very simple. You need to see the big companies and ask yourself, what exactly are they doing right? Like on the screen, you can see some of the top companies in the world, right? The 3 logos that you see on the screen are from different industries with different products. But if I ask you, what's the one thing that's common between all these 3 companies? What would it be? Like, what's the one thing that's common between all the top companies that you see on the screen? The answer is simple. They have a predefined system for everything. They have a predefined system for everything, and they are process driven and not people driven. Like, for example, if somebody from McDonald's resigns from the company, they can hire somebody from the outside who's a complete fresher, and they can train him or her in just few days or few weeks to reproduce the coffee or the burgers with the same quality. And how is that possible? It's because they have predefined systems or processes in their company. Now, the important question is, what exactly is the meaning of the system and what exactly is a process? Can anybody make a guess? What do I mean? What do you mean by a system, or what do you mean by a process? By the way, if I'm going fast, just to mention it as well, so I can slow things down as well. What do you mean by a system, or what do you mean by a process? Just share it in the Q&A section. A task broken down into small steps, training and a checklist. Superb. Yeah, so you are correct, sir. So here is what I mean by a system. Anything under the sun, if you want to produce or if you want to achieve an outcome, it can be broken down into small sequential steps. Anything. Like, for example, if you want to make a coffee, can it be broken down into step by step? Yes, right? If you want to do a stat audit, can it be broken down into a step by step? Step 1 is vouching. Okay, in vouching, what are the things that you need to look for? This is the checklist. Yes or no? Anything can be broken down into a step-by-step system. That's what I mean by a process. I mean, from now onwards, here is what I want you to do. I want you to look your business as one system. Or in fact, like anything that's going on in your business, just see how we can break it down into sequential steps. Like, for example, what are some of the 10 things that you do on a daily basis? Now ask yourself, can each of those things can be broken down into step by step? Yes or no? The moment you start seeing your business as a system, which can be broken down into a step-by-step system, the way you start seeing your business will completely change forever. Again, I'll give you a different perspective. I want you to look at your business as, let's say, driving a car. What's the purpose of driving a car? It will to take you from point A to point B, right? Now imagine it's a world-class car. Everything is perfect, except the brakes in the car are not functioning. If the brakes in the car are not functioning, would you reach your destination? Yes or no? Everything is perfect. It's the most luxurious car on the planet. The only challenge is the brakes are not working. Will you reach your destination? Yes or no? Of course, no, right? Okay, now let's say, okay, the brakes are functioning. Everything is perfect. The steering wheel is not functioning or is not there at all. Will you reach your destination? Again, the answer is no. So look at your business as car, and all the brakes, the steering wheel, seats, everything as subsystems. For car to function properly and to take you from point A to point B, all the subsystems also need to function properly. Similarly, in your business, it's a one system, and for you to achieve the vision, all the subsystems need to work properly as well. Like you must have sales systems in place. You must have product or service delivery system in place. The accounting and finance have to be strong. So all the subsystems have to be properly functionable as well. So this is the way that I want you to start seeing your business as. Now, let's get started with the dashboard CEO system that we implement in with all our clients. So I have broken down everything into 5 steps, and from now everything is going to be practical. So I want everyone to have a pen and paper with you. So the first step you must do if you want to systemize your business is you must clearly define KRAs and KPIs of every person in your company. I repeat, you must clearly define key responsibility areas and key performance indicators of everyone in your company. So how do you do that? Again, it's broken down into sub points. So the first step you must do is you must clearly define your 5-year vision of your company. Remember, I started the section with you must have a right strategy in your company. This is the step that you must do if you want to have that strategy in place. So on a piece of paper, I want you to write down what's the 5-year vision for your company. It can be a monetary goal. It can be, I will be expanding into these geographical areas, whatever. I want you to just make a note of it now. You have 15 seconds. Again, we will go fast. We will not be doing it in detail now because we have a lot to cover. But what I want you to do is I want you to write on a separate piece of paper all the action steps that you can take after the session. So what's the 5-year vision of your company? Just whatever your gut feelings is, make a note of it. Once you have written it, just type yes in the chat box. So I know that you are listening and you are actively participating in the session. So it can be something like, I want to achieve X turnover, or I want to expand to these areas in India, something of that sorts. Okay, now that you have written down your 5-year vision, assume that you are now not in 2022. Now you are in 2027, which is 5 years from now. Assume that you have achieved your vision. Again, assume that you have achieved your vision. Now, how does your org chart looks like? How does your org chart looks like now? Like, I mean, in 2027, you will be the CEO of the company. And what are the departments in your company? Just make a note of it. One would be HR department, one would be accounting and finance, one would be, let's say, stat audit department, one would be internal audit department. So make a rough draft of the org chart in your company now. Like if you want, you can even further break it down into sub departments as well. You have 30 seconds. And if you have any questions, please do ask them in the Q&A section as well. So if you have achieved your vision, how will the org chart in your company will look like? Make a note of it. Yes, org chart, how it will look like after 5 years. True, correct. So this will give you more clarity on what are the roles you need to hire as well. Okay. So now once you're done with the org chart, I want you to write who is responsible for that department in this moment, as in today, as on today. Like for example, let's say you have an HR department. Who is responsible for HR department? If you do not have anybody in your company who's looking after HR, as a business owner, you are responsible. So write your name under the department. But if you have somebody who's actually in your HR department, write his or her name now. So first we have made org chart looking at the future, and now we'll come to the present. Under each department, you will write down who is responsible for that department. If you do not have anybody in the department as on today, you will write your name, because as a CEO or as a partner, you are responsible for that department. So again, if you have any doubts, just type it in the Q&A section. So if you are done, just type yes as well. So 15 more seconds, we'll start. We'll take the next step. I think there is some technical issue. That's why with the chat box, so we are not able to activate it. Perfect. So let's move to the second step. So if possible, I mean, if the company is big, you can have something called as an authority matrix, which basically means in the org chart itself, make a note of like who will report to whom. And then once the org chart is done, now you know what are the departments. And also now you know, okay, in HR department, now you need to make a list of those employees who are in the company, who are in the department, right? Now for each person, you need to write down what are the key responsibility areas. What do I mean by that? You need to make a note of all the activities that this person in the department needs to do. For example, let's say in stat audit, what are the activities that a person who is looking at stat department needs to look? They need to do the vouching, they need to ask for the documents, they need to do the scrutiny, all these activities, right? So now you need to make a list of those activities for every role and for every person in your company. I repeat one more time. Key responsibility areas you need to define for each role in the company and for each person in the company. KRS simply means you need to break it down into action steps. And just to get started, I want you to take one employee in your company and define his top KRS. If you want, you can just share it in the Q&A section as well, so I can help you out. Like, I think most of you are CAs that everybody is doing audit, right? Let's take audit as an example. Like, let's say an audit executive. What would be his top KRS? Make a note of it on a piece of paper. And start sharing it in Q&A as well, so I can read it out loud, so everybody will get more clarity. Define KRS of, let's say, an audit executive. That's the activity. You have 45 seconds. Nileji, what do you mean by that? Activity across the board? Yeah, it's fine. Agrawal sir. One person can be responsible in two departments. It's completely fine. He can be responsible for two departments. Make a note of that as well. Okay, he's responsible for both the departments, and these are his top KRS. It's fine as well. And rest everyone, like what are some of the KRAs that you have written on a piece of paper? Just share it with us as well. So this is one activity that I have seen completely changes for business owner once they do it. This is something that I have observed with most of my consulting clients. On day one of the assignment, I usually ask the CEO of the company, okay, now tell me what is the top KRA of this one employee? And he will say, okay, this employee is responsible for these activities 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, completely fine. Then I go to the employee that he actually described and I ask him, what are some of the activities that you do on a daily basis and on a weekly basis? In most cases, the employee will share completely different tasks. You see, it's because there is no alignment with the CEO and the employee of the company. The CEO thinks that the employee is responsible for one activity, but on the field, he's doing something else at all. And the boss will think, okay, now this person is not productive because he's not doing the task that he's responsible for. But if you define these KRAs to the T and you communicate this to the employee, okay, these are your KRAs on a piece of paper, everything becomes black and white. Everything becomes black and white and there is no blame game. Like how many of you like have faced this issue? So one employee will come and say, okay, I'm not responsible for this task. This person is responsible for that task. And the task doesn't get done. Have you faced that? In 80% of my consulting clients face that issue. And that issue can be solved if the KRAs of everybody in your company gets defined to the T. Now, I don't expect you to clearly define KRAs for everyone in this workshop, but I'm sure you get the understanding, right? What do I mean by KRA? Type yes if you are with me so far. And if you're finding the session useful. Super. Now that you have defined KRAs of your employees, this is going to be the most interesting and the most challenging. As a business owner or as a CEO of the company, what are your top 3 KRAs? As a business owner, you do take the salary, right, every month. Why do you take that salary? Or why do you get paid as a business owner? What are your top 3 KRAs? I want you to close your eyes and spend 15 seconds and answer yourself this question. What are your top 3 KRAs? Do you get paid because to solve the employee challenges? Is that your top responsibility? Or is your responsibility to do sales and marketing, for example? Or is it to provide quality service to the clients? is your responsibility to do to actual accounting and finance, like bookkeeping, for example, in your company? Is that why you get paid? Yes, as a business owner, you are responsible for everything in your business. But I want you to clearly define what are your top 3 KRS. And once you define these top 3 KRS, 80% of your time should be spent on these top 3 activities. And rest everything you need to delegate to your team members. Again, this is the next activity for you. I mean, this is something that do some thinking after the workshop. Now that you have defined your KRS, now it's very important to analyze or to know if the employee is performing as per his role or not. And how do you do that? You do it by defining the key performance indicator, or KPI in short. Remember that business is a numbers game. Anything in your business can be broken down into numbers. Anything. Now, let's say, for example, I'll give an example of sales executive because it's the easiest thing. What are the top KRAs of, let's say, sales executive? It is to do phone calls, it is to set up appointments, and it is to get new customers. So the new revenue gets generated, right? These are top KRAs. Now, break these activities into numbers or KPIs. For example, one of the key responsibility areas is to do phone calls or cold calling. Now, can you track how many cold calls that he's doing on a daily basis? That becomes KPI. Number of telephone calls that he's doing, number of appointments he has set up, number of new clients he has closed, and what's the revenue that he has generated for your company. These are the top key performance indicators. If you start tracking these key performance indicators, you will know if the employee is working correctly or not. That's what I mean by key performance indicators. Again, now the key performance indicators can be broken down into further 2 things: lead measure and a lag measure. Don't go by the terminology. In short, you need to start tracking both activities and the results. Activities and the results. Lead measure is the activity. It means that it's something that you can control, or it's something that the employee can control. For example, in case of sales executive, number of telephone calls, it is something that is in his control, right? That is the lead measure. And number of the revenue generated, that is not in his control. That is the result of the activity of the telephone calls. It becomes the lag measure. So you need to start tracking both lead measure and lag measure for every employee in your company. For example, audit executive, you can start tracking how many audits is he actually doing. Yes or no? That's something you can track, right? And how many audits have actually been finished before time. One of the biggest challenges most practicing CS face is the receivables, right? It's again a key performance indicator for you as a business owner. You can actually start tracking. These are the amount receivable. Start tracking that as well. So those becomes the key performance indicators. Now the next activity for you is define the lead measure and lag measure for you as a business owner and also for every employee in your company. So now, if you see, this is the first step. You have made an org chart where you have defined the departments, and for each department, you have put the persons responsible, and then you have defined the key responsibility areas of every person, and then you have set the key performance indicators for every employee. That's the first step. Now, how many of you think that if you do this one step, it will bring a lot of clarity in your business? Just type yes in the chat box. Just this one step, defining the key responsibility areas and the key performance indicators in your company. Yeah, so that's the first step. You have clearly defined KRAs and KPIs. Now, once you do that, the second step is you must clearly define and write down the SOPs, or something called as standard operating procedure. What do I mean by standard operating procedure? It's a step-by-step instruction for any activity in your company. Like I've started the session with what is the system, right? Anything in your company can be broken down into a step-by-step system. Once you make a note of it and write it on a piece of paper, it becomes a standard operating procedure. And once you make a note of it, all you need to do is you need to tell your employees, this is the process, these are the steps, everyone in the company needs to follow it to the T. Again, once you define SOP, it doesn't mean that everybody will start following it from day one. It's practically not possible, but it's an excellent start. This SOP will become a training manual in your company. It will become a training manual in your company. Even if somebody leaves your organization, when a new employee comes, all you need to do is you need to give this SOP to him or her, and the training period will be reduced drastically. That is what I mean by SOP. And what are some of the SOPs that you need to create? In the first step, you have defined the departments, right? And you have also written down the key responsibility areas. For each KRA, go to each KRA and start writing down the process. For example, in the audit, let's say one of the steps or one of the KRAs is to do vouching, right? How to do that vouching? Make a note of it. And that becomes a SOP. So both SOPs and KRA can go hand in hand. It's not like one will come front or one will come afterwards. It will go hand in hand. Because I have to break it down into step-by-step systems, I have put KRAs first and then the SOP second. So that's the next action step for you. For each department and for each KRA, make a list of all the KRAs and start writing down the process, and it becomes an SOP. And when all the SOPs you put together, it becomes a training manual or a playbook for your company. Now, I want everybody to at least write down one SOP that you will create in next 24 hours. And I want you to share it in the chat box now for me. Like, what is that one SOP you will create in next 24 hours or in next 48 hours? Like, it could be an audit SOP, or it could be even like a salary return as well. So last year I had trained one, I had done a very similar workshop, and the proprietor of the firm, CA firm, he made a SOP on how to file ITR of salaried person. So he made a rough draft of it, and then he gave it to the employee who's actually filing the return, and he went through that SOP, and he again made modifications and made that SOP perfect. And now that SOP is followed by everybody in the company. So this guy, he sends me a message saying that, you know what, now I don't even have to look at the salary return of my clients. The entire employees look after it because it's clearly defined in the SOP. So what's that one SOP that you will create in your firm or in your company? Just make a note of it. Again, before that, whenever I say to my prospective clients, right, I help companies to set up systems in their company. Almost everybody says that, you know what, it will not work in my company because my company is different. Like even I have heard many practicing CAs say that you can't systemize a CA form because every client is different, or my service is too specialized. I mean, are you one of those persons as well who thinks that your business can't be systemized? Yes or no? I mean, if it's no, then you are right. Any firm or any business can be systemized. Of course, some can be systemized, everything. But for most of your companies, almost 90% of your processes can be systemized. Any company, if you actually look it down, no matter what the size is, no matter what industry they are in any company can be broken down into 6 pillars. That's it. Every business will have the pillar of marketing, sales, product or service delivery, operations, accounting and finance, or people. That's it. Every business will have these 6 elements. Yes or no? Now that you know these are the 6 pillars, take one pillar, create SOPs in that one pillar, hire somebody who can actually execute those SOPs, and then move to the second pillar. Repeat that process and come to the third pillar. Again, this is a other way of looking at your business. Instead of looking at it as one business, look at it as 6 pillars in your company. Hire somebody who can actually execute those SOPs. Now, let's say in accounting and finance, you are the person who is doing everything in your company currently. For example, accounting and finance, you are the one who is doing the bookkeeping. You are the one who is actually making those financial statements. What you can do is you can create SOPs on how to do that bookkeeping. Like if cash withdrawal is there in the bank, what are the entries that needs to be passed? Make a note of it in a form of an SOP. And once that SOP is done, what you can do is you can hire somebody to execute those SOPs so that accounting and finance is taken off in your plate. And you can come to the next pillar. So what will happen is once those SOPs are defined and you hire somebody, the time that you spend in operations will start to reduce. Once it starts to reduce, you can focus the 80% of your time on your top 3 KRAs that you had defined previously. So again, this is the activity for you. Make a list of all the departments, all the KRAs, and start defining those SOPs. And every SOP will have these 9 elements. I mean, don't worry, I'll share this document with you on LinkedIn. So these are the 9 elements. First, write down the date on which the SOP is being made, name of the SOP, and what is that objective that this SOP is trying to achieve, or what is that problem that this SOP will solve. Like for example, the name of the SOP could be ITR return for salaried person. And what is the objective? If somebody follows this SOP, they can file the ITR of a salaried person. Once you do that, the next step, broad steps. Write down the broad steps. The first broad step would be to collect the documents, all the required documents. Second step would be whatever. The third step, fourth step. Make a broad steps. Once you write down the broad steps, break it down into simple actionable steps. For example, the step 1 would be collect those documents, right? Now, again, break it down into step by step. What are those documents that needs to be collected? Bank statements, Form 16. If the person has invested in, let's say, LIC document, LIC or ATC, those documents. So broad steps, again, getting further broken down into actionable steps. Once you do this, you will have a clear step by step. Once you make a note of these action steps, next to each action step, write down who is responsible for that action step. Who is that person responsible for it? Make a note of that name of that person or the department's name. And also below it, how frequently that action step needs to be done. That needs to be defined as well. And also you need in the SOP, what are the software that needs to be used to execute this SOP? Make a note of it as well. Like for example, if you're using any software, write the name of that software along with the username and password of it. So that the employee will not come to you and say, okay, please give me the password. It's defined in the SOP. Alternatively, you can actually write down in the step-by-step format, or you can actually document it in a form of a video. Like you can screen record your video where you actually are doing that process and explaining it. So that becomes a training video for the employees as well. So if anybody has to execute that SOP, what he needs to do is he just needs to watch that video or read that SOP. Clear with this? Just type yes if you're with me so far. And are you finding it useful now? Is it becoming practicable? Can you see you actually implementing it in your firm? Superb. So that's the activity for you. Make a list of all the SOP that needs to be made. I mean, one recommendation for you, you can start with any SOP, it's completely fine. But if you ask me personally, start with that one. What is the most troublesome process in your company? Like what is that one process which consumes a lot of your time? Start with that thing, make a note of it, and then give it to somebody else, some employee of yours, so that something gets removed from your plate. So this is the second step for you. Create checklists and create SOPs for everything in your firm. And the third step is you need to start setting up trackers now. And you need to have a task management system in place, and you need to have a system in place where you're tracking all the KPIs that got set up in step number 1. That's the third step for you, setting up trackers. The first thing you must have is you must have a system in place where you are actually delegating the work to your team members. It can be in form of an Excel sheet, or you can use any task management software or any practice management software. It doesn't matter. You need to have a system in place. I mean, on the screen, you can see that I have created something in Google Sheets. It's a very simple task management that I set up with my consulting clients. It basically has that task manager for every employee in the firm. And what are some of the tasks that is delegated to him or her? We put it on a piece of paper, like in the task description. And when is that task assigned on? And what is the due date? And what is the status of the task? It's a very simple task manager. And once you set it up, what will happen is you can actually, the communication between you and your employees will get reduced. All you need to do is you just need to open this task manager, just write the task that you want to assign it to him or her, and then forget about it. And in the morning, that employee will open his task manager and sees, okay, these are the tasks that are assigned to me, and he will do it. So the miscommunication will start to reduce. I mean, now, like, how many of you have experienced this? You assign a task to some employee verbally and you forget about it. And even he forgets about it. And after a month or two, you remember, okay, this was something that has to be done. And you remember exactly who you told to, but he says, no, you didn't tell me, or he forgot about it. Happened with you? Yes, right? But if you put it on a piece of paper or in form of a software, this will not happen. We will actually see, okay, this was the task that was assigned to this person on so and so date. So everything becomes again black and white. Your time gets reduced in the day-to-day operations. This is the next thing you need to have in your company. And also you need to have a system in place where you're tracking those key performance indicators, KPIs, remember? And you need to start tracking it on a weekly basis. On a weekly basis. Like, for example, let's say one of the KPIs is he needs to file X number of salary returns in this week. Ask him at the beginning of the or at the end of the week, saying, okay, tell me how many returns have you filed in last 1 week. So again, everything will start becoming black and white. Now, because you are tracking it on a weekly basis, the employees will start to take it more seriously. He will know that, okay, now my boss is going to ask me on every Monday what I did in the last 1 week. The productivity in the company will start to increase as well. So these are the two things that you need to have in place. Set up task management system and start tracking those KPIs on a weekly basis. Again, let me give you a warning or a practical tip. Setting up these systems is very easy. It will only take like 10 minutes or 15 minutes to create that Excel sheet and say, okay, we need to do this from this week. But the challenge will start from now onwards. It must become a habit for you. It must become a habit for you. And making it a habit is the most challenging part. So let me give an example. Like one of my clients, we set up the task management system in his company. and the employees were simply not filling it up. We used to follow them on a weekly basis for 3 months. And we followed like all the strategies, carrot and stick. We gave them incentives. We again started saying, if you do not do this, this is the penalty. And it took us 3 months for the entire company to form a habit. Now it has been almost 2 years or 3 years, I think, and it has become a habit. Every employee in the company is filling up the task management company system. So again, I remember setting up is easy, making it a habit is slightly difficult, and you need to stick it up. This is the third step, setting up the trackers. Are you with me so far? Do you see yourself actually implementing it in your firm? Type yes, like if you can actually start implementing it from this week itself. It's not rocket science, right? It's very easy, but it will be a game changer for sure. Okay, now that the 3 steps are, you have defined the KRS and KPIs. You have defined those SOPs, and you also have the trackers in place. The trackers are filled up by the employees on a weekly basis. Now, as a business owner, you need to have something called as a dashboard. What do I mean by a dashboard? It's just a 1-page summary of all the important numbers in your company. I repeat, it's just like a 1-page summary of all the key important numbers in your company. And you need to create a dashboard and you need to track it on a weekly basis. Remember, I started the session with saying if you follow and implement these 5 steps, you will become a dashboard CEO. That is what I mean by that. Once you see this dashboard, you will exactly know what is going on in your company, what's going on right, and what needs to be improved. Okay, now it can be in form of a graphical way, like what you see on a screen, or it can be a very simple Excel sheet. It can be a simple Excel sheet with the key important metrics. Now tell me, as a business owner, what are some of the most important numbers that you need to track? Just share it in the chat box for me. What are some of the important numbers that you need to execute? One important metrics that I see most practicing CS needs to have is the receivables numbers. Like what are the invoices that needs to be raised and what's the money that needs to be receivable. That's the biggest thing. And what else? What do you think you need to track on a weekly basis? And if you just by looking at those numbers, you will know for sure if the company is on right track or not. I mean, this is very important. So we'll spend like next 30 to 45 seconds on this step. So make a list of all the important numbers that you will start tracking from this week onwards. Like sales, cash flows, invoices raised, number of returns that needs to be filed, or number of returns that are filed. How many new clients you got this week? I can start sharing it in the Q&A section so I know. And if you are done, just type this in the chat box as well. So Sudhaji, what are some of the metrics that you will track now from this week? Email sent, okay. New clients acquired, okay. Again, you need not track like 100 key metrics. I recommend that you put it anywhere between 5 to 15 numbers. That's it. Cash flows, okay, that's very important as well. Only like 5 minimum, maximum 15 metrics. That's it. And create like an Excel sheet and update it on a weekly basis. I mean, if you are an expert on Excel or Google Sheets, what you can do is you can set it up in such a way those numbers get updated automatically based on the MIS or the trackers that your employees are filling up. So all you need to do is you just need to open that dashboard and see those numbers already getting reflected. Yeah, we should actually start tracking the time as well too. So these are the 5 steps. Before I summarize those 5 steps, let me share with you a actual case study or actual story of one of my clients. So this client of mine is again in a service industry. And when I started, he had a team of around 12 people. And he was working around 60 to 75 hours per week in the company. He was the one who would actually pay the salaries of the to the employees. He was the one who is doing actual reply to those emails. He was handling the customer support or the client's complaints. He was doing everything. And he had no idea what those employees were doing on a daily basis. If he would go and ask those employees, what are some of the things that they are doing? They would always say that we are very busy. We have too much of work. Too much of work and too busy. And he had no way of knowing if the company was in the right track or not. So he actually hired me like almost towards the end of his financial year. When the financials came, he was shocked. He had actually made more than $1 million in revenue, and he thought that the net profit would be around 400 grand, something of the lines. But the net profit was way much less than that. He was like shocked. Where did that money go? And he thought, okay, now this is high time. I need to have systems in place. And he hired us. And I implemented what I taught you in the last 1.5 hours. We actually sat with every employee of his company and we made a list of all the numbers, all the activities that they were doing on a daily basis. We made an org chart, defined the departments, and for each role, we defined those KRS. And we decided KPIs for every employee in the company. And what happened was the moment we did this step, everything became black and white. Now the employees cannot say I'm busy. right? Because we're actually tracking the work on a daily basis and in real time. Because we were using it on Google Sheets, the boss or the CEO of the company can actually just open that Google Sheet and see what's going on in the company. And we have actually written down, identified the key processes and wrote down the SOPs for it as well. So everything became standardized. And we were tracking it, everything on a weekly basis. And the productivity of the company improved drastically. And we have also identified the key important metrics and made a dashboard. Now, what I do as a consultant, I sit with him every Tuesday morning and go through the dashboard with him. He opens the dashboard and see, okay, this is where my company stands as on today. This went right and this did not go well. Okay, now this did not go well. What can we do to improve it this week? Believe me, in last 1 year, that $1 million revenue went to $4.5 million. That's not the good news. The good news was, and good news is, from 60 hours a week, he's just working in that company for just 4 hours a week in operations. That's it. 4 hours a week in operations, and rest of the time he spends on sales and marketing and to get those new customers. That is his secret for that rapid growth, because he has systemized everything, put everything in black and white. Now, you have done 4 steps now. Identify those KRAs, put SOP, written on SOPs, started tracking in form of a trackers and creating a dashboard. And the most important thing, if you do not do this one step, whatever you did so far is a waste of time. What is that 5th step? You must have routines and rituals in your company. You must have routines and rituals in your company. And what do I mean by that? You must, in your company, have a daily huddle, a weekly review, monthly review, quarterly review, and yearly review. In the monthly, quarterly, and yearly is where you go deep and review everything in your company. And in the daily huddle, you just track or you just ask your employees, what are some of the tasks that he's doing on a day-to-day basis? Or you can assign the task to him on a daily huddle. Daily huddle will take maximum 15 minutes. That's it. Maximum 15 minutes for everybody. In the daily huddle, you just assign the task to that person and you get update on what he did on a previous day, and you ask him or her if he needs any help. That's it. Those 3 questions. And the second thing, which is the most important thing, if you do this one thing, believe me, miracles will start happening. And this is the secret that I recommend everybody to do, or you must set in your company, is called as a weekly review. So what will you do on a weekly review basis? You will review the numbers from your scorecard or your dashboard. Remember, whatever you have set up, everything will come to the weekly review now. Whatever numbers that are actually placed in the trackers and in the dashboard, you will review them in the weekly meeting. And I recommend that you have a weekly review meeting every Monday morning, the first thing in the morning. And the second thing, you review all the activities that your employees did the last week. You just ask them what went right and what needs to be improved. And the third thing, you will start setting the targets for the next week. For every employee of yours, you will actually assign the task to them. Okay, these are the activities that you need to do. And towards the end of the meeting, you ask every employee for the suggestions and what needs to be improved in your company. Because they are the ones who are actually on the field, they will be able to give you a better suggestions. Once they give, you can actually implement those suggestions in your company. I mean, if you ask me, out of all the steps and out of all the activities that I have asked you to do, if you ask me what's the one activity which will be a game changer in your firm, it will be this step, a weekly review step. Trust me, this was every client of mine will say after 1 year, say this was a game changer. Again, it will just take one decision of yours to say, we'll have a weekly review from this week. But it will be very difficult and you need to have that commitment to make it a habit. Clear so far? Do you understand the importance of weekly review meeting now? And if you'll implement it, I mean, if you want to do it, just type yes in the chat box. Excellent. So again, just to give you a broad summary of everything that we learned so far, these are the 5 steps. And if you implement these 5 steps, the chances of you, or even you will start reducing your time in your operations. And you can spend most of your time on sales and marketing and in growing the company. And what are those steps? First thing, define the KRAs and KPIs of every employee in your company. Start defining and start writing down the SOPs. Third, set up trackers in your company. You start tracking all the KPIs and you will do it on a weekly basis. And the fourth step, you will identify the most important numbers in your firm and create a dashboard. And again, you review this dashboard on a weekly basis. Once you have set everything up, the fifth and the most important step is you need to set up routines and rituals in your firm. And the most important ritual is the weekly review meetings. I recommend that you have a weekly review meeting on a Monday morning. And how do you implement it? Few steps. Take one system at a time and implement it. I mean, now, like, I'm sure most of you are very motivated, right? Okay, now I will do everything now. It will not happen, believe me. What I would recommend, take one step or take one process, implement it at a time. Again, your involvement will be very high in the beginning because it's your responsibility. It's you that needs to set up the process in your company, right? Next, this is the most practical tip that I can give you. Involve all your employees at every stage. Involve all your employees at every stage. I mean, do not say this is the SOP, from today you will follow it. If you do that to your employees, they will say, forget it, I will not do it. Instead, what you can do is tell them that we're trying to become process-driven firm. It will help you. What I want you to do is I want you to create an SOP for me. Like, actually start involving your employees in making those SOPs. Once you do that, your employees will start feeling involved. They will work as a team and your total involvement will start reducing overall. These are the practical steps to implementing the systems in your company. We'll wrap it up in few minutes and take Q&As. Before that, any Q&A, anything you want to ask or anything you want to share. Did you find the session useful so far? Can you see yourself implementing it in your firm? Just type yes so that I know that you are still here. So before we finally wrap it up, so the first action step that you can take is whatever you learned in this workshop, start implementing it. I have tried to make it in a form of a action steps, right? Step 1, step 2, step 3. I hope that you have made a list of those activities or those actions. So just go to that piece of paper, start implementing it from this week. And second thing, you can add me on LinkedIn. And I have all those action steps. I have also made it in form of a checklist. So I'll give it to you. Just add me on the LinkedIn. And the third thing is, if you want to know how to implement everything in your form, just shoot me an email and we'll have like a one-to-one free strategy session with you, where I will actually sit with you and try to analyze everything in your form. And we'll try to come up with a customized action plan for you. It will be for anywhere between half an hour to 45 minutes, and it's completely free for you.
There is one question. In today's uncertain environment, sometimes it is very difficult to predict each and every KRA and tag individual against it.
Yeah, that's perfectly fine. You know the KRAs that are he needs to run it as on today, right? Define those. That's it. And if something gets modified, you can actually modify those KRAs right later.
Another question is, should not we first have to prepare total activity across the board?
Yeah, I have answered that. It will go hand in hand. KRAs and SOPs will go hand in hand. So what the whole purpose is, like, you need to be very clear. These are the departments in the company. These are the people in each department. And for each role, for each person and each department, these are the activities. And for each activity, this is the SOP. I mean, it doesn't matter what you do first.
So Amit Chaudhary has asked this question. I need to know what are the processes in accounts and finance which can be made process driven or automated instead of routine manual work. We had explored RPA to automate few routine processes which could not succeed. If you could help how to automate data entry process in SAP.
So I'm not an expert in SAP, to be honest, but I'm sure there are different ways of. I had heard about a software where you actually scan the invoice and the entry will get automatically entered. So there is some software. I do not know that software, but there are some tools that are available for automation. But again, not everything can be automated. There will still be some manual work.
Do we have any more questions?
Just share the feedback, like what was some of the key takeaways, what could have been better in today's session. Just share it in the Q&A. I do not know why the chat was not working, but it's fine.
Any participants would like to ask anything or share anything? Or
so even in the family-owned business, the process will be the same. These are the exact steps that needs to be followed. The only challenge in the family-owned business, if you have like your father or your grandfather who is actually the CEO, it will become a challenge to convince him to change the habit. So that would be the biggest challenge. But again, you can start slowly. That's the one tip that I can give you, but the steps would be exactly the same.